offensive big time, as the husband or any family member would be.
Yeah. So I guess eventually he does take a polygraph, but he takes it upon himself. After this case is not being taken very seriously, he's not getting anywhere. He hired some private investigators. Then he made up flyers and he sent them out all over the Eastern Seaboard to over 9,000 hospitals, police departments, which aided, in helping finding and identifying her body later, as we mentioned in the beginning. So this story just gets really crazy. So 600 miles away, North Carolina, pretty far distance from Philadelphia, her body's discovered in September. So 5 months later. And when they find her body, they described her as wearing new but appropriate hiking gear, which her husband says, when she left to go doing a tour, she wasn't wearing hiking gear.
In Philadelphia.
Right. And they were not the clothes that she was wearing. And there were some witnesses who think they might have seen her in Philadelphia, but they say that she wasn't wearing hiking gear when they saw her. But what she was wearing might have been appropriate for hiking in the mountains around Asheville in mid-April, around the time that she went missing. So when they find this body, there was no wallet or other identification in the pockets. Now, she did have about $187 in cash on her person. So robbery was clearly not a motive in her killing. She also had her wedding jewelry set on. And her clothing reportedly had horsehair on it.
That's weird.
Which is very strange. And she was wearing or had near the body a pair of Bali sunglasses, which I guess were pretty expensive. I mean, they were saying these sunglasses sold for like over $100 a pair.
Okay.
Which is another weird element because her husband said she was not a flashy person.
Right, or high maintenance.
Yeah, that she was not the kind of person who would go buy like $150 pair of sunglasses. That was just kind of out of character.
So here she has.
She seemed like a really low maintenance woman.
She has new hiking gear.
Brand new hiking gear.
And these expensive sunglasses. And back in that day, that's a good amount of money to have in your pocket. A couple $100 cash in her pocket. And that's just weird. And she went missing in Philadelphia.
Right.
So that's just totally crazy. Well, now she's in the Pisgah National. Her body's found in the Pisgah National Forest.
Well, one of the other weird kind of details, people are like, well, maybe she ran off. But when she left Philadelphia, her husband said she left like $500 in cash behind in the hotel room. And she did have an American Express card, but it was immediately like red flagged so that if a transaction was made, they could alert the police she bought stuff. So, there's this whole thing. If she bought a new kind of wardrobe or, new things.
How would she buy
for North Carolina? How would she buy them? And then she had cash on her person. Plus she had this red backpack. And now her husband says she had this old red backpack and that she took it pretty much everywhere. Like trips. She had it in Philadelphia. I guess her kids described her as being an outdoorsy kind of person. Like she enjoyed going on hikes, going to parks, that kind of thing. And that she would always take this backpack with her. And when they found her body, there was no sign of this red backpack, but there was another backpack present. It was like a blue and black, and that it was described as being like new. So new sunglasses, new backpack, new clothes.
That's totally crazy.
Odd. And then, of course, the horsehair. However, when detectives were investigating, they found nearby a place called Mountain Springs Cabins and Chalets where she could have stopped because the trail, I guess, ran up kind of behind this place. And they went in, they interviewed the lady who ran the place. She hadn't seen Judy or heard of her, hadn't talked to her or anything, but she was like, oh, well, people come by here all the time on the trail, and they often stop and pet the horses.
Okay.
So it could have been that she was hiking along, stopped, maybe, was petting these horses. That's how she got the horsehair on her person. Now, some people speculate that perhaps she was horseback riding. That maybe she was horseback riding with someone and they killed her. That's how she had the horse,
Right.
So that's a big question, how that happened. But, clearly robbery was not a motive, they don't believe. So her husband, he's still a suspect. they're trying to figure out what happened. Well, later on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, because this case actually did make it to the TV show, there was a friend of Judy's that told police that the newlywed couple, were having some marital problems and that Judy may have left him.
Okay.
Now, Jeff didn't mention, at any time that they were having any kind of problems. And Judy had adult children, and they disagreed. They said that her marriage seemed fine, that they hadn't heard anything. I guess she was very close with her daughter. And, her daughter said this didn't seem plausible.
Right.
And for her mother to just up and leave didn't make sense. And if you think about it, it really doesn't. If she's trying to leave her husband, why would she take the flight to Philadelphia if she wanted to leave him?
Right.
Like, why didn't she just send him on? That would give her a week home alone.
Get your stuff and get it out of there if you want
together,
to.
Get packed up, get out of there.
Yeah.
Take all the money out of the bank account, whatever, right?
Right.
So why not just leave? If she wants to leave him, leave when he's out of town. Like, why go to the effort of flying to this strange city, going through this motions of being on vacation?
Yeah, having to find stuff to do while he does business.
Up and leave.
Yeah.
Doesn't really make sense, right?
No, it doesn't.
Well, witnesses thought they saw her in Asheville. Well, and obviously that's where she, ended up. But they say they saw her there. There was an employee at Biltmore Estate who said they saw Judy, I guess, at Biltmore, at a campground near where her body was found, up in the woods. The owner said that she drove up in a gray sedan that was filled with boxes and bags and asked if she could spend the night in her car there. And I guess they told her, she couldn't stay there, so she drove away. There was a deli owner that said that Judy came into her store, now this would have been in Asheville, and she was in a gray sedan, bought $30 worth of sandwiches and a toy truck. And local investigators considered these things credible, these sightings. There were even some other stories, a lady in New Jersey who claims that she saw Judy in New Jersey. But the weird thing is there was no financial record of like a rental car, airfare, train ticket, cab. If she rented a car, there was no record of it.
Right.
So if she's driving this gray sedan, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Because there's no paper trail
showing
that she rented a car.
She doesn't have hasn't used her credit card.
And being 600 miles away, she didn't just walk to North Carolina.
No.
Right? She had to get here somehow. I've made that trek up to Philadelphia, and that's a long-ass trip. It's like going to take you, 12-plus hours with traffic.
So this is a really weird story for her to go up there with him to Philly. They're basically newlyweds. By his account, everything's fine. By her children's account, maybe those closest to her, everything's fine. And then she just up and disappears from Philadelphia.
Well, again, Jeff is a suspect. And so initially investigators thought that his story seemed weird about his wife being in Philadelphia to begin with. Because they say when they checked the room, they didn't find any cosmetics in the room, and there were no dirty clothes in the hotel room.
Okay.
So they thought that maybe he, packed a bag and brought it and then claimed she had left or something. Because there was really no trace other than her suitcase, I guess, that had some clothes in it.
Like his fake alibi kind of story.
Yeah, that kind of thing. But the children, because she had 2 adult children, said that this was not really odd. Because they said Judy didn't wear makeup, and she would have likely reworn her travel clothes again. So if she spent a day flying and had something on for a couple hours, that she was the kind of woman who would have just reworn that outfit the next day, that was not a weird thing, that she was really funny about, not wanting to have lots of laundry, and that she was just a really, practical, sensible kind of person.
So again, a low maintenance, low profile type of person.
Right. So her kids were totally backing up Jeff. He didn't have any part of this, whatever. So eventually he is ruled out as a suspect. And primarily because, as they described him, he was a corpulent fellow.
Ah.
He was big boned, if you will.
Husky lad.
He was large man, large and in charge Jeff. And he also suffered some pretty serious health problems. And they think it would have been very unlikely that he could have disposed of her body where it was found.
Right.
Because he's a really big dude. Plus, I mean, how you going to get 600 miles away in a few hours, murder her, hide her body, and then get back to Philadelphia for a conference?
Yeah, that's pushing it there.
None of that makes sense.
No.
So he's ruled out as the suspect. And unfortunately, he died back in 2005.
Okay.
So not even 10 years after her disappearance, he dies of natural causes.
Okay.
Because, again, had a lot of health problems. Really big fellow. But, when he described her, I mean, he said that she was really just one of the, nicest people. Like, just really caring. And so I guess he had a hard time with the idea that she would have just heartlessly up and left and not even told her kids where she was going.
Right.
Because she was so close with her kids, and that she was just a really good person. So she was a nurse in the Boston area, and she did a lot of home care. And her daughter even said at one point she had traveled with a very sick elderly man down south to take him to his family as he was kind of getting to the hospice stages. And so police tried to investigate that because they thought that might have been a tie to this area, to Asheville. But there were no real leads in that, and they weren't really able to establish any kind of connection to a former patient or his family.
Now, were they from this area?
They were from the Boston area.
So they're from that area,
from
Philadelphia,
England.
Boston area?
Yeah.
And, wow, so that's even crazier. I did not realize that.
And I guess Jeffrey Smith, before Judy married him, because she'd previously been married, and I guess one of the ways that they had even met was that she cared for Smith's father for a week after he had throat surgery in the mid-1980s. And he said Judy's devotion to his father's care was just so heartwarming, and that she was just so concerned about his dad and was doing all this extra stuff and just really going above and beyond, to care for him. And he even recalled a story about how she used a window curtain rod to hold the IV bag when the father needed the IV dripped into him.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have the proper holder for it. And that she just was really, dedicated, like just go above and beyond.
Passionate.
Yeah. And so, Jeff was divorced, had a grown daughter, and started dating Judy. And then they were married in September of 1996. So I guess they dated, for a while. But
right.
She had cared for his dad. So I guess that's kind of
how they met.
Yeah, the relationship, how they met. And then I guess it went from there. But I mean, by all, accounts, he seemed to be in love with her and pretty enamored with her, and, described her with a lot of kindness. And, he seemed to really recognize that she was like a good soul. So that's why for the story of her just up and vanishing by her own choice is
right.
just very odd.
This is a very strange case. Honestly, it's one of the, as far as where she disappears from, that's her area, Boston, Philly. They're in Philly, kind of next door to where they live, at this conference with him. And then, boom, she disappears, and her body shows up 600 miles away in the Pisgah National Forest.
Right.
New clothes on. Hiking clothes, because appropriate hiking clothes.
I read she was actually, I guess, from the knee down, they were able to see that, she had on jeans.
Right.
And she even had on, like, thermal underwear.
Right, because in April, it could still be cold out there on the trail.
So, that would have been very appropriate for the time.
Yes.
Being on the trail. Expensive sunglasses, new backpack. It's just really odd.
Very strange.
Well, as I mentioned, it was on Unsolved Mysteries. And back in 2016, investigators were hoping to do more forensic testing on some of the items, found. But at that point, several people had passed away, including her husband,
right.
that were maybe questioned, or witnesses, that kind of thing. Because this has been, going on for a while. This is like 20-something years ago. So by that point, they're kind of running low. And who knows? I mean, whoever the killer was could have already died by now. You just don't know. But, they had the Philadelphia police, the FBI, and the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office investigating this case. And if you think about it, there's like, the thought of, somebody runs away, they go into the woods, they commit suicide. But suicide isn't a possibility here. I mean, she was stabbed.